Well, good morning. I'd like to thank you for joining me today as we come back to the book of Genesis and spend some time in the truth. Joseph's brothers have returned to Egypt. The test of Joseph has proven itself to reveal the struggle that exists in his brothers' lives, the basic entrapment of Benjamin has brought about Judah's revelation of his concern over Benjamin not being able to return home and his father ultimately not being able to survive such a shock. And it just reveals to me again the beautiful picture of a difference in their opinion now. When Joseph was Jacob's favorite, they hated him and sold him into slavery. Benjamin, now being the favorite of Jacob, doesn't bring the same feeling to his brothers. They want to preserve him rather than forsake him. And I just can't imagine how that spoke to Joseph's heart. But we're going to find out as we look now at chapter 45, verses 1 through 8 in Genesis. And so Joseph, verse 40, or chapter 45, verse 1, then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. And so the response of Judah to the situation is just overwhelming for Joseph. Sorry, my collar's a little disoriented there, driving me crazy. And so now Joseph's at the point where he can't keep the secret any longer. And so he begins to break down in front of all those that are in the court, wherever they were in his home. And so he commands everyone to leave his presence, the middle of verse 1, make everyone go out from me. So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. So Joseph wanted this revelation to be a private time between him and his brothers. No one else was going to be in the room. And so he clears the space, gets everyone out of the room, paves the way for the opportunity for him to be able to reveal himself to them. Verse 2, and he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. So it must have been a pretty significant display of emotion that is moving Joseph in this moment. And it's at this point that he makes the revelation a reality. Verse 3, and Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is our father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. So this moment just baffles me. For all these years, more than 10, Joseph's been gone. They don't know what happened to him for real. They assume that, selling him into slavery, they came back and told their father he was dead, that the wild beasts had eaten him up. But they had no idea really what happened to Joseph. They had no picture in their head. And now here stands Joseph before them, declaring himself to be their brother. He has recognized them from the very beginning, but they did not recognize him. And now all of a sudden, here it is. I'm your brother. And I can't imagine how taken back they were by this statement, by this reality, that Joseph is here. Wow. Pretty amazing. I can understand why they had no answer, why they had no response. I can imagine that for at least the 10 who were part of the selling him into slavery, this is just absolutely outside of their realm of understanding what's going on here. Makes me wonder what Benjamin thought, because Benjamin wasn't part of this selling him into slavery. Benjamin's been told for his whole life that his brother's dead, and now all of a sudden, here's his brother. For Benjamin, also very emotionally challenging revelation to have to digest. Verse 4, so Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. So he calls them close now. They were at a distance from him when he made the original revelation. And now he gathers them together around him. And he confirms in their mind who he is. And that you sold me into slavery. And so that is the most significant piece of evidence that Joseph can offer, that is to demonstrate to them that I am him. I know what you did to me. I know that you sold me into slavery, and you know that as well. So the proof is in the pudding, and Joseph helps them understand that this is real. I am him. You sold me here. That's that's where we are. But then he goes on in verse 5 to comfort them. Verse 5 says, and now do not be dismayed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. God sent me before you to preserve life. So Joseph, now realizing the big picture of things, seeing what God's purpose was in it all, isn't angry with his brothers. He's not holding any kind of bitterness or resentment toward them, because he's understood what God has done in moving him from Canaan to Egypt through his brother's deception and betrayal. Moved him to the place where he needed to be. God put him there on purpose, and the reason why is very clear to Joseph at this point. And so the comfort is there for them. Don't be distressed or angry with yourselves. Don't be overwhelmed in your heart that this happened, because there's a bigger purpose here than you and me. There's a bigger purpose here than your frustration with me as your younger brother who had these dreams, and they were from God. And God used all of that to move Joseph to this place where he needed to be. So don't be dismayed or distressed or angry with yourselves, for God sent me before you to preserve life. God did this. The realization of Joseph, the sensitivity of Joseph to the work of God, pretty amazing what Joseph is able to discern, what God revealed to him. Such a blessing. Verse 6, for the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And so he goes on to reveal to them the facts. The fact is that the Pharaoh had this dream, and the dream revealed that there was going to be 7 years of famine. We're only through 2 years of that famine. There's 5 more years to go. It's going to get more and more desperate everywhere. But God put me here so that your life could be preserved. Not just my life, but your life could be preserved. Verse 8, so it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and Lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt. So God provided everything. God worked in every step that Joseph took, and that his brothers took, in order for God to get Joseph to the place where Joseph needed to be, so that Joseph could be the one who could effectively minister not just to Egypt, but to his family for years to come. And boy, what God does, the things God does are beyond our ability to comprehend. He has every ability to work his plan, and he uses people to accomplish that. And here he used Joseph's brothers. He used their jealousy. He didn't cause it, but he used it um, to accomplish his purpose. And so it gets Joseph to this place where he must be in order to be able to preserve life. And he elevates Joseph to this position where it's possible through the ability that God's given Joseph to interpret dreams and to uh, use the wisdom and discernment that God has put in Joseph to accomplish his purpose in the world in this circumstance. And I love Joseph's spirit here in realizing that it wasn't the fault of his brothers in a sense, but it was the will of God for him to be sold into slavery and be delivered into Egypt so that this possibility could be completed. And wow, it's hard for us to understand sometimes how Joseph can have such a meek and quiet spirit about it all. But the reason why is because he does realize that God is the one who has made this possible. And it's not, in the short term, it seemed like a terrible thing. But in the long term, looking back at the circumstances and how things unfolded and how God worked and how God moved to get Joseph to this position, it was definitely for the benefit of the world and more so for his family, for his um, nation to be able to continue, that the nation of Israel would be able to continue to thrive, even though the famine was great in all of the land. So God works in ways that you and I often don't understand or comprehend at the moment. But many times in our lives, we can look back at what God and realize the pieces were on the board and God was the one moving them around in order to be able to get his people, and in this case, Joseph, to the place where they need to be in order to be able to be of the greatest use to him, the most effective tool. And so I can't imagine Joseph's brothers at this point. I mean, they've been feeling guilty already. We've seen that in the narrative, that they knew that God was convicting them of what they'd done. And now for them to hear Joseph say, you had a purpose in your heart, but God had a greater purpose in his heart. And God used your purpose to accomplish his purpose. And so I'm not angry or mad or, boy, the words just aren't coming to my head at the moment. I don't have any animosity toward you because I do realize that it's God who brought me here and it's for this purpose that I'm existing, and all of it worked together for God to bring about his purpose in your life and mine. What an amazing part of this story for us to read, to see the differences in the characters and the conviction in the brothers and the peace and the comfort that Joseph offers to them in this moment, where I'm sure their distress was pretty heavy, having been convicted already. So it's a great narrative in Scripture. It teaches us many things about God's purpose and what he's doing, how we ought to be submitted to that purpose and walk through those things, however God has determined they should unfold. And we need to be a testimony to him, a testimony of goodness and grace to those around us. Just a great narrative in Scripture. I love to reread about Joseph. More and more things come to mind as I examine the narrative here. Well, thanks for taking time in the truth with me today. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we come back and pick up here in Genesis 45, verse 9, and see how the narrative continues to roll forward. Thanks so much for watching today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I hope it's an encouragement to you to think through these things and just to give the glory to the Lord for all that he does. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.